Hello, and welcome to our session. During the last year, the most dominant trend across retail continues to be omnichannel because of the unprecedented growth in e-commerce. And now it's just the norm for retailers. It's expected. Our session today is titled Navigating Compliance Challenges Along the Retail Continuum. But we could have easily called it Growing Pains. Because as your business grows, among other things, the compliance challenges facing your business become even more complex. Today we're going to have a conversation with two companies in the retail industry and get their personal perspectives on the current compliance complexity challenges. Please welcome from RMW Commerce Consulting and Chief Product Officer of Spoonflower, Rick Watson, and Tax Manager of Ruggable, Jason Lamb, who I'm so excited about because I love Ruggable products. Rick, let's start with you. Would you mind just introducing yourself and your company?
Thanks, Meg. My name is Rick Watson. I've been in e-commerce for the past 20 years. About 3 years ago, I founded my firm, RMW Commerce, where I help mid-market brands with e-commerce growth strategies and digital transformation. As part of my work with Spoonflower, which is an artist design focused marketplace, helping them with a number of design and operational improvements so that they can continue on their current growth trajectory.
Awesome. And Jason?
Hi, I'm Jason Lamb. I'm tax manager of Ruggable. I have about 10 years of experience in tax, pretty much any type of tax, income tax, property tax, sales tax. And I have been with Ruggable for about 1 year. And Ruggable, as we all know, we sell rugs, washable rugs. And if customer prefer, that usually comes in 2 layers. There's a layers below it to prevent slipping. And then we have another layer on top that you can just take out and wash them. They come in different size and pattern. And these days, other than improving our products continuously, we're also expanding into new product lines like washable chairs. Yeah, you can actually wash a chair now. And even more that we'll see, I believe in a couple of months, we'll have even more new products coming out on our websites.
Amazing. I love that. Well, I think we can all agree right off the top that all of us want to grow our businesses. We want to increase our revenue, our reach, our customer base. But each business's path to that is different. Omnichannel historically was the progression from brick and mortar to online. But now, depending upon who and where you are, you might have started from brick and mortar, then moved online, or you might have been a completely digitally native brand like Ruggable, which applies to you, Jason. And assessing the right approach to participate in alternative channels, whether they be marketplaces, social commerce, or other. I'd really love to hear your personal stories and perspectives on the growth of retail and the retail sector in general along this continuum theme. So Jason, let's start with you.
Sure. In the end, I'm a tax person, so I'm not as close to the customer or the e-commerce as most people. But I could tell from my perspective what really changes in the business, in the retail world by these channels. I see the most important or huge change is information gathering. Like with all these channels, you can listen firsthand to your customer, what their complaints, what their needs, what are they most satisfied with your products. And this is huge because right now you can interact with customers so closely, and with a good enough product teams, you can satisfy these needs much faster and much more closer to what your customer wants compared to in the past. Customer buy a product, take it back home, and don't like it, and you don't even know it until like hundreds of customers are insatisfied. So I believe this is what the next, or actually current opportunity is for business, is to be really customer obsessive and have to ways to be customer obsessed.
So true. Such an important point. You know, that's really the foundation of Amazon's business, right? It's this customer obsession, but it has just become such a critical component to being successful in this space. Rick, your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The way I look at it now, it's not so much, okay, did this sale happen in the store or online? Regardless, data and technology is influencing all sorts of consumer purchase behavior. So if that sale happened in the store, you look at a company like Target, 95% of their online orders are fulfilled from their stores. Now, if someone is sitting on a couch in a Target store and orders that shipped to their home while they're sitting in the store and it ships from the store, is that an online order or store orders? No one cares anymore because it's really just about the technology and the consumer experience more than who gets credit for the sale anymore. And I think a lot of that has been in response to what do these retailers do about Amazon? And really the simple answer to that is don't worry about who gets the credit, just make things simple and convenient for the consumer.
Well said. Yeah, so interesting. Okay, well, now that we know more about you guys, let's get some of your perspectives on the challenges that you are seeing firsthand in your specific businesses. We'll start with customer demands and customer expectations, which we were just discussing. How have they changed, and how must retailers, particularly small business retailers, think about this in the context of their business and staying relevant? Jason, given you were just discussing this, would love your perspective specifically on Ruggable, and given the rapid growth that you all have been having, how does that become a factor for you?
Yeah, and echoing Rick, making it convenient for the customer is like super important. Ruggable places a huge emphasis on lead time because Ruggable's products are mainly made to order. So after the customer places an order, it takes a little bit of time until we produce a product and then ship it to the customer. This is like almost the number one most important thing that we keep talking about within our company every month is how to get the product faster from our suppliers, or even order ahead of time, predicting the demands from our customer, how to make it faster, how to ship the order faster, and where to put our warehouse. Like this is one factor that affects us the most now that we know the customer, or now that we know that we being convenient to the customer and being able to give the customer our products earliest is important.
Yeah, yeah. Rick, it looks like you're about to say something exciting.
No, I think it's interesting. Spoonflower is a manufacturer on demand marketplace. And so on one side, we have 1.8 million designs that are submitted by hundreds of thousands of artists every day. And those designs can be applied to hundreds of products. And so for the consumer, what they have to do is, what do I want to buy today to make my home beautiful and reflect my personality? And so I really echo one of the things that Jason said with regards to turn times. So if you're manufacturing something on demand, something that matters and is extremely important is from the time the customer places the order, how quickly can the consumer enjoy it? Because as soon as they go through that cart, they're going to forget about the shopping experience up to that point, even though most companies focus a lot on the front end of the experience. One of the things that makes Amazon such an amazing company and has allowed them to disrupt a lot of retailers is from the time you click on buy now, you just know the product's going to show up in a day or two. And so that encourages you to buy more and more, and it improves purchase frequency.
Yep, well said, well said. Well, you know, it's interesting because this need to consistently focus on the customer and solve for expedited delivery and experiences certainly has a factor in compliance complexity. And I'd love both of your opinions at how retailers can really manage this. If you think about moving product closer to the consumer or participating in more channels like Amazon as an example, how does that affect compliance for retailers? So Jason, would love to get your perspective first.
Sure. When it comes to compliance, I have to say, most of the time, most companies don't put enough focus or resources into compliance. And a lot of time it's not their fault, because before they know it, they could be filing in a handful of states or jurisdictions in the past, but like 2 months later, when they look at the sales again, suddenly they have a filing obligation. It's like in like 20 states. Yeah. And usually when it comes to compliance, it's not like you realize you have a requirement and then the next day you start filing. It's 99% of the time it's not like that. You have to start from finding the right person and then finding what type of tax you're actually subject to. For example, if you're in multiple jurisdictions, you have to deal with transfer pricing, duties, even other taxes like VAT or general sales tax in Canada, and then even just in US, different products might have different taxability, different customer might have different taxability. You basically have to analyze all your products, analyze, there's just so much stuff into it. This goes back to the beginning when you say growing is pain. Growing is really a pain because there's so much stuff involved in it. Every time you get into a new jurisdiction, it could easily be anywhere from 2 months to maybe 4 to 6 months of preparation to get a company ready to be filing for all these jurisdictions. So I guess my advice to company who are like expanding and then thinking about how to achieve 100% compliant is to start early. Usually it's much better to start early than to realize a year, 2 years, even 3-4 years later, you're filing obligation for the last 3 years, and then penalties and interest start jumping in.
Yeah, great advice. And you know, it's interesting because you're in the tax world, and so you can appreciate all those requirements. But Rick, for those retailers that don't have that appreciation or knowledge, what advice would you give for them to be able to even understand what to do as their business grows?
Yeah, I think particularly brands that are upcoming, they either don't know or they don't want to know. And so someone like Jason is a blessing to have as a business, but if you're a small or medium business owner, you don't have someone like Jason. And so the only time you start to worry about it a lot is if the house is already on fire. And that might come from a fine or an accountant or an auditor or a state sending you a nasty letter. And so that's the time to worry about it. But then even if you have someone great like Jason in your business, a lot of times, you know, management teams are focused on revenue and profitability. They're like, oh, do we need to solve this? Do we really need to solve this compliance issue now? Why do we have to pay tax in Wisconsin? We don't have any stores there. And so that's really the point of view of a lot of these businesses is a little bit see no evil, hear no evil. And so I would advise before the business gets too big to really spend the time to do actually a professional audit of what your exposure is to tax online, because it's very different than selling through traditional stores.
That's excellent advice, and so very true, because that's exactly what we're seeing here within Avalara, which is until it's a crisis in many circumstances, do folks really want to understand what they need to do? So great advice. Well, fascinating, and you alluded to this, Jason, which you know, we'll segue to now around going global. And if you think about being online, inherently now you're open for business anywhere. And so, but those not just expanding into different states in the US, but expanding into different countries, what does that have ultimately as an impact on cross-border and requirements and preparing for cross-border? And how can retailers think about doing that within their business if they are not doing it today, or doing it maybe more seamlessly and better? So Rick, would love your experience. I know you've got quite a bit of experience here in cross-border. Would love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the cross-border problem starts with really a simple idea is, what are you selling? And that has to do with product classification. So everything about selling cross-border starts with the fact is like, who's selling, who are you selling it to, and what is the product? And let's say you're a marketplace like Spoonflower, you have potentially hundreds of millions of different products on your website. There's no way that someone could go into the inventory system and say like, oh, this is a rug, this is a broom, this is a cup. And how do you know you're right there? And so software and technology for these things, if you don't know what your products are as new designs or new inventory is uploaded to your website, you have no hope of calculating the right tax or knowing that if you even have the right to sell that product into different cross-border markets. And so I think it really starts with the foundation of, first of all, do you understand the products that you're selling? And second is, are those products allowed? Then you can start to do research like, okay, I want to be in Europe because my customers are here. Europe is not just like another US state, right? And so it's significantly more complex to deal with. And so you have a whole new set of regulations in front of you.
And so just to double click on that, so how do you know? How will they know what's available to sell into Europe?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like enlisting the help of the platform. So there are ways you can sort of automatically analyze your product titles and descriptions and attributes and saying like, okay, these products are probably these things. And then you at least have some kind of baseline of compliance, because otherwise you just really have gaps in your strategy. And once you have a baseline, then at least you have some way to improve from there. Now, the problem that most people have is that they don't have a baseline at all. And so all their product codes are maybe incorrect, and maybe they were the default, however the system was set up.
Yep, well said. Jason, would love your thoughts too. Is Ruggable shipping international presently?
Yes, we just launched into UK and Germany about in the last 6 months, and we are planning to launch into even more European countries. And well, I can't say it better than Rick on on the customer and product placement. I could talk a little bit about the compliances. What I can see is right now, most of the retail businesses expanding internationally lacks a one-stop consultant shop in telling them what to do in each of the country. When Ruggable expanded in the UK, we found a local CPA firm over there to help us with payroll, their VAT. And then when we expand into Germany, we have to find another firm to deal with that. And now we are looking into more European countries. Basically, each country, we need to find some local firms. And sometimes when it comes to compliance, it's not just one local accounting firm can help you. For example, going into Germany, we actually need 2 other firms to help us to be a financial direct or indirect financial rep that become jointly liable with our VAT, and we didn't know about it until a couple of weeks before we launch. So what I'm seeing is businesses expanding internationally really need to start early. As I said before, start early and find some consultants who can point them the way to even not just like achieve compliance, but to know what they need to do and the timeline, what resource to put together. Because once you launch, it becomes too late, and then the compliance gap just keep getting bigger and bigger.
And how has those compliance challenges changed by country? So you're in Germany and the UK today. Have you noticed a difference between the complexity between those 2 markets?
In the end, tax are about the same. It's a percentage of your product. But the differences among countries is what is being taxable. For example, shipping, is it taxable in UK but not taxable in Germany? How about the discount? How about return? How about, like for example, you have duties and then you have VAT. Are the duties included in VAT or not? And then each country is slightly different in that aspect. And that's why we're reaching out to a local CPA firm, because we simply can't find one firm that could advise us in all the countries.
Fascinating. So final question to wrap up. What would be your personal advice to a business that wants to grow but is in the early stages? Should they be nervous about all this compliance complexity? How should they best handle it?
I think particularly for growing businesses, I would start with the platforms. The platforms are becoming more global by default. So there are a number of cloud-based e-commerce platforms, and they're starting to include some of this internationalized or localized functionality, or have plugins for those areas to sort of get you started. I mean, particularly the biggest worry is like, what are the things that you don't know that you're at risk? And so the way to think about it is not like, oh, if I don't think about it, it's not there. It's more like, if I'm selling, then the risk is there and the money is owed, whether I know it or not. So you're either going to pay a little bit now or you're going to pay a lot later, because 3 or 4 years later, the agency will not have forgotten that you didn't pay taxes or fees 3 years, in prior years. So that will be on you, not only to pay those back fees, but also penalties for not paying attention to it to begin with.
Well said.
Can't agree more. Like the most horrible stuff is the stuff that you don't know. And if you don't file any tax return, there's no statute of limitation. The government can just come back to you even 20 years later. So always good to, like, even if you say it costs too much to be compliant and file everything, it's better to have someone to look at everything early and know where's the issue and how big is the issue, and then you can decide later instead of ignoring the problem.
Really, really good advice. So to summarize, customer obsession, don't ignore things, start early, and leverage technology. I think that's the theme of essentially what you guys are recommending, which is really excellent advice. Well, thank you guys so much. Great discussion. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and wishing you both huge success. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meg.